She didn't want to run, look over her shoulder, or hide away in the corners of the city, but her father, in an infinite level of stupidity, sold her to the gang that runs her hab block. Now, she was running hard, with a group of 3 gangers chasing her. Her fate seemed sealed, as her species wasn't built for endurance. They could run and were known for their burst speed, but her pursuers were valite insectoids, tireless, emotionless, and unyielding. She stumbled into an alleyway, gasping as she was trapped in a dead end with no way out. Her muscles were already at their limits, her lungs grasping for insufficient air, and her fur was wet and heavy from the rain. Was this it? Was this as far as she got after 2 weeks of freedom while being hunted? She looked around, hopeful to find a pipe or bottle to use as a weapon, but the only thing in the alleyway was the body of a homeless reject. Her pursuers scuttled in a few seconds later, clinking their mandibles as they spoke. Their translators gave their alien dialect meanings as it converted their speech to galactic common. The largest one said, "See, the lop-bups are stupid and can't sense or remember terrain," standing at nearly 6 units tall as it rose out of its octupedal run. "Yeah, stupid and dumb," the smallest one responded. "So what now, brothers? What were our orders? Boss wants her whole and unblemished." "Apparently he has a fancy for her," the middle one said, "likely the leader of these 3, or at least her kind. You." She cursed back at them, her hand reaching into her pockets to find anything she could use, but her panicking mind found only a small penknife. "Come on now, we aren't the bad guys. We're just the delivery boys. If you cooperate, we'll be nice and buy you some grub and a change of clothes," the middle one said. She looked around. There were a few windows above them, but the city was mostly abandoned at this time of night. Her chances were growing to 0 as she willed herself to break her own rules. Taking a deep breath, she screamed as loud as she could, "Someone please save me." The 3 Valmites pounced, their bodies shadowing her from the light of the street like a veil of despair. Shutting her eyes tight, she wasn't ready, but a sick and hard crunch snapped her eyes open. 2 of the Valmites had backed off, the smallest one landing on the floor with its head caved in, and a tall alien standing in front of her, its back to her and hands balled into fists, one covered in the thick ichor like blood of Valmites. "Yeah, I heard enough to know I can't sit back and watch. Not when you call out for help like that," the alien said. Its tone and clear voice gave away what it was, a human. She looked around, realizing the homeless person she saw before wasn't dead, but might as well have been. Humans are worldless and have no rights or protections in the Empire's territories. Their home world was destroyed before the Empire found them, and while they are tolerated, they are considered the lowest of the low, worse than the scum chasing her. But then again, this human stepped in and saved her. "Please help me," she said with a will to sound innocent and desperate. The middle one, quick on the beat and weighing his chances, retorted, "No, her father sold her off to pay off his debt. We're just here to collect." Standing more relaxed, he gestured for his larger compatriot to do the same. "Besides, if you help us, we'll split the bounty with you. 4,000 credits can go a long way for a heist like you, HM. I bet it would," the human said, but pulled out a long, serrated combat knife. "But I'm not in the habit of going back on my choices, and I don't need money." He looked over his shoulder to her, his eyes shining red with cybernetic augments. "Are you a citizen of the Empire?" She hesitantly nodded, unsure why he would ask such a random question. "Stay there. I'll deal with the trash," Rumi the human said before charging the Valmites. She had no time to consider his choice of words as the battle unfolded in front of her, and to her shock and slight horror, the human was in full control for the minute it took for him to dispatch the Valmites. His combat knife seemed redundant, as his fist was enough to crack the exoskeletons of the Valmites, but to call what he did anything less than a slaughter was an understatement. The human ripped the large one's arms and legs off before caving in its thorax with his boot, and sliced the middle one into 3 pieces with just 2 quick, effortless swings. Swinging the blade through the air to get most of the blood off, he then wiped the blade clean on a rag before sheathing the weapon again. Looking over at her, he smiled softly. "Don't you worry, Rumi. I'll protect you," he said as he walked back over. She stared at the human in shock, her mind recalling as much information she knew about his kind. But her memory was limited, and all she could glean was that the one in front of her, offering a hand, was male, taller than average, and most likely a former soldier of some kind. "Thank you," she tailed off, unsure of what she was meant to do. "My name is Dan Smith," he said as he gathered his small collection of possessions. "I am Zadar Mayos, but my friends call me Zil," she said back, unsure of what was going on. Her mind refocused on the word he used to address her. "What is a roomie?" He smiled wide. "Humans can't rent or own homes, so you are now my roommate. I have more than enough to pay for a few years and other things, but you'll be the name on everything. Deal?" he asked, extending a hand to her. She looked at the hand, recognizing the gesture as something void merchants use when they agree on a bargain. Was living with a human worth the risk and stigma, or was she just being foolish? It didn't matter. This human was offering his skills and protection in exchange for a roof over his head, a sentiment she could agree with. Taking his hand, she shook it in one strong and direct motion. Deal. Zil walked a bit behind the human. They were walking farther away from her HAB unit and towards the edge of this HAB block. He was tall, nearly 6.2 units tall, and built for war, dark brown skin and hair braided back into a short tail, a few scars across his exposed skin, and his clothes were shabby but a uniform from the last war with the Xenon Confederacy. "So Dan, you fought in the last war. Why?" she asked slowly, wanting to gain some insight into this human. "Oh yeah, when you're homeless and in need of a bed and food, fighting is a step up. You get 3 squares and a cot," he said back, walking a bit slower so they could walk shoulder to shoulder, his duffel bag slung over his opposite side from her. "I mean, I would have been fighting gangers anyway. At least on the battlefield, it's easy to tell friend from foe. But you're worldless. You gain nothing from fighting for the Empire, so why fight at all?" she asked as they made their way down in an elevator to the lower levels of the HAB block. He rubbed at his chin. "Because humanity has a permanent grudge against the Xenon Confederacy," he said ominously. "Oh, I see," she muttered, feeling that this line of questioning might poke at something he was not comfortable sharing. "Anyway, let's focus on getting us a place to live," he said, stepping off the elevator and walking not to the administration office, but to the gate out of the arcology she had known as home for all her life. "Wait, where are you going?" she asked, half stepping towards the safety he provided but still fearful of leaving her comfortable bubble of familiarity. He stopped and looked back, a soft and understanding smile on his face. "You've never left your HAB block, but don't worry, Zil. I'll be right beside you. We're just going 2 HAB blocks over. An hour walk at most." She couldn't stop the nervous gulp, but took his hand as he offered it, squeezing a bit tighter as she left the space she once called her world. The sky above was much wider than she imagined, and the streets spacious with ground vehicles traveling on specific roadways. Her eyes flickered as her ears snapped to every small sound that her mind portrayed as a drawing of a blade or the cocking of a firearm, but his presence next to her grounded her fear and anxiety a bit. "You are a lop bup, right?" he asked with a small smile. "Your kind come from LPO Prime," she nodded. "Yeah, is that a problem?" she asked nervously, her ears dropping a bit and fear taking a small hold in her demeanor. She reached up and felt her long ears that stood a bit off from the sides of her head, running her fingers through them. "Oh, so your people nicknamed us after animals that aren't predators," he burst out in hearty laughter. "What? No, bunnies are prey animals that were mostly domesticated by the time of the Sundering. The home fleet has a colony in every one of its livestock hangars." She seemed confused. "Your people keep animals alive on your ships?" she asked, having seen the human home fleet in the night sky once, 5 years ago, like a roaming constellation of thousands of stars. "Yeah, humans are omnivores, and we need meat and vegetables to live, so when we were preparing to escape Earth, we took as much genetic material to clone our animal companions and friends," he said slowly, a warm smile on his lips. "Once we got our hands on artificial gravity tech, we built our first farm bay, and once it was deemed safe, acceptable, and humane, we built one on every ship." She was stunned and shocked by the revelation, her lips forming her curiosity into words. "But is it enough to feed a ship?" he smiled. "No, a single farm bay can't feed a whole ship of thousands, but that's what the agri-ships are for." "Agri-ships," she pondered aloud. "You have ships in your fleet completely dedicated to growing and feeding your population." Got to go to one once. "It was crazy, but somehow completely organized and handled well," he said in a reminiscing tone. "One agri-ship can feed about 50 ships or one of our supercarriers." She felt a bit off and nervous. "Should you be telling me this?" he smiled. "There's a saying to anyone that deals with the home fleet, watch your fire or see your world crack," he said. "We let most that are stupid off with a warning, but those that try to push their supposed claims of strength, we break their fleets and teach them a truth that makes the super governments of the galaxy nervous. And what is that, she asked nervously. Earth was a death world, he said as they moved closer to their new hab block. It looked no different from her last one. His last comment left a lingering silence between them, but he cleared his throat, holding out a credit chip. Okay, here, go to the admin office, get a small family unit, and don't answer anything beyond your basic information. Also, if they ask, claim I am your bodyguard and don't tell them where you are from. She nervously took the chip and pocketed it, taking a deep breath to settle her nerves. She walked into the administration office and found the renter's desk, happy to see a lop-bup sitting behind the desk. Excuse me, I would like to rent a small family unit, she said. The lop-bup at the desk was a man who looked over with a sigh. How many inhabitants? 2 medium entities, she said, taking steadying breaths. The officer looked over and out the window. You can't rent a unit with a human, he is my bodyguard. All payments and naming is my responsibility, she said, placing the credit chip down. The officer groaned, taking the chip and checking it, then coughed in a bit of surprise. I see. I believe we can get you situated, he said, quickly typing away at his terminal. Can I get yours and your bodyguard's names? I am Zadar Mayos. My bodyguard is named Dan, she said quickly, not giving her last name just in case he tried looking her up in the planetary record. He typed in the information and looked up. Occupation. Self-employed, but my business is legal and allowed in Empire space. It's not important enough for you to record it, she said, trying to sound confident and in control. The officer seemed confused and looked at the readout on the credit chip. Very well. I have a unit free for habitation on level 56, grid B, door 320. Let me get you the key badges, he said, standing up and walking over to the locker behind him, getting the 2 badges out for her and Dan. Please run the first 2 payments now, she said, taking the badges and clipping one to her belt. Of course, the officer said and typed something into the chip reader. A soft beep from his phone gave way to his taking some of the money for himself. Corruption was not uncommon, and far too many low-end workers like him skimmed a bit off the top. Processing the real payment quickly, he handed her back the chip. There, all squared away. Thank you. I will be making payments at the start of every month going forward. I will not announce our exiting of the unit, she said, taking the chip back and checking how much was taken, smiling a bit as the officer took a typical sum. Understandable. We hope you will enjoy your stay here, the officer said as she walked away. Dan looked over as she stepped out. So 56,320,000, and the office took less than in my last hab block, so fewer gangs, she said optimistically. He smiled softly and looked about, spotting what he suspected. Only 1 gang marker drawn over others. That's good, but I think the cut was less because there's only 1 gang here, and they have a monopoly on illegal activity and better control on the administration, he said. She frowned, having not considered that possibility. Oh, is that bad? He patted her head, the gesture somehow cheering her up and out of her saddened state of mind. No, it's not bad as long as they aren't affiliated with the gang that has your father's debt. Besides, I don't think we'll be staying on this world long, he said as they walked to the elevator. What? She said, shocked as they walked to the elevator. Yeah, sorry to say this, but a gang that can house and keep Valite will have the influence to hunt you down anywhere on this planet, he said, as the elevator started to move. We just needed somewhere with access to the data net and walls for defense while I call in a ride, call a ride. Like from the home fleet, she asked nervously. The thought of leaving her birth world was the favorite dream of all children, to travel the void and see the distant worlds only spoken of in news and stories. He chuckled. No, not the fleet, just a friend that should be passing through. She should be here in a month or 2, he said, looking around as the elevator stopped halfway up the massive structure and the maintenance sign flickered on as the doors opened. Come on. There's another elevator nearby. As they walked, she felt a chill run down her fur, like a charge of static setting her nerves on end. Why does it feel like someone is watching me, she asked. Because we were just scanned. The wall we passed has a sensor suite built under it, he whispered, taking her hand gently and keeping her moving. What? Why? Who? She asked quickly, her ears perking up and scanning the area. Most likely the gang that runs the hab block, he said with a smile. They're trying to figure us out. See, the chip I gave you marked you as a diplomat, but one that doesn't say to which government you belong. What? She asked, horrified, feeling like she was used. Relax, they're confused because I'm here. No diplomat would hire a human as a bodyguard, he said softly as they reached a new elevator, pressing the call button. Are we in danger, she asked softly. Not yet, but when we get to the unit, I need you to make a barricade to hide behind. With luck, I can get them to back off. However, it may still get messy, he said as they rode the elevator up to the 56th floor. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel. For every comment that says we will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.